At 11:22 a.m., Liam Bennett's phone buzzed. He was in math class, third row, window seat, thinking about lunch, not tragedy. When he checked it, he didn't expect a goodbye. But there it was. A text from his little sister. "I love you. If I don't make it out, just know that, okay?" And then, gunshots. The phone fell from his hands. Everything stopped. Before the SWAT teams. Before the helicopters. Before her name made headlines. There was just a text. A girl hiding in a closet. A brother frozen in fear. And a moment that changed everything. But before we dive into the details of the story, kindly drop in the comments section the location you are watching from, and push the subscription button for notification on captivating and interesting stories on Chase Studio series. Now let's continue with the story. June 4th started like any other. Ella Bennett, 14, tied her hair into a ponytail while brushing her teeth. She wore her favorite hoodie, light blue with a faded NASA logo, and smiled as she checked her texts. Her brother Liam, older by 2 years, was already eating cereal, one sock on, one sock missing. "Ella, you're gonna be late again." Liam, muttering, "Better late than early." Their mom, Karen, stood at the sink, packing lunches. Single mother, full-time nurse, eyes tired, hands steady. There was nothing unusual that morning. No strange faces. No alarms. Just 2 kids walking to West Ridge High, arguing about who got the last Pop-Tart. Ella liked science, liked books, loved cats. She wasn't the loudest in class. She wasn't the quietest either. Just normal. And that's the part nobody talks about. She wasn't in the wrong place. She wasn't a troublemaker. She was just there, like so many others. In the wrong school. On the wrong day. At the exact second. The wrong boy decided to stop being invisible. Ella Bennett wasn't the kind of girl anyone expected to be in the news. She didn't chase popularity. She didn't need a big friend group. Her circle was small, 2 close friends and a cat named Miso. But online, that was her world. On Discord, she was funny. In group chats, she was the peacekeeper. She was the kind of girl who sent good morning texts to her best friend every day, complete with a random cat meme. She was smart, but not a show-off. Quiet in class, but warm when you got to know her. Her favorite subject, biology. She once told her science teacher she wanted to study marine life. Or maybe forensic psychology, she said with a shy smile. Because I want to understand why people break. That morning, Ella had gym first period. She hated it. Changed slowly in the corner of the locker room. Earbuds in. Hoodie up. Invisible by choice. She texted her best friend, Zoe. Running today. I might fake an injury." Zoe replied with a laughing emoji and a GIF of a sloth collapsing. Ella smiled. At 10:43 a.m., a school-wide email went out. Reminder, all classroom doors should remain locked during instruction. No one thought much of it. A glitch. A drill. A staff misclick. But Ella noticed something strange. The boy 2 lockers down from hers. His name was Jordan Hayes. He'd been absent for weeks. Now he was back, and just staring. He didn't say anything. Just sat on the bench, staring straight ahead. Ella didn't tell anyone. Why would she? He wasn't doing anything. Just sitting. Right. Sometimes, evil doesn't knock. It waits. And sometimes, the people around it are too young to recognize it until it's too late. Jordan Hayes had been gone for 19 days. No one really asked why. No announcements. No gossip. Just absence. And then one day, there he was again. Same gray hoodie. Same untied shoes. Same blank stare. He never smiled. Never raised his hand. Never joined group projects. His desk sat in the far back corner, like he wanted to disappear. or watch everything without being seen. 3 years ago, Jordan was just another quiet kid in middle school. He liked video games, anime, and walking his dog. But high school changed him. First, his dad left. Then his grades dropped. Then the bullying started. Not loud, not public, but constant. He was that kid. The one people threw things at during lunch. The one who sat alone at the bus stop. The one teachers said was moody but never asked why. One classmate once shoved his books to the ground and said, "Why don't you just drop out, freak?" Jordan picked them up in silence. At night, Jordan vanished into forums, anonymous corners of the internet where hate was currency and pain was welcome. There, he didn't feel weak. He felt powerful. He posted once under an alias. "They'll be sorry. One day they'll see me." Nobody knew it was him. Nobody reported it. Nobody cared. 2 days before the shooting, he bought a second-hand backpack from a pawn shop. The same day, he posted this on a thread titled Revenge. June 4th. West Ridge. During third period. Watch the news. Jordan Hayes sat alone at lunch that morning. Just like always. No one sat near him. No one said his name. And no one knew that inside his bag, beneath a rolled-up hoodie and a wrinkled notebook, was a loaded handgun. Intercom voice, distant. "Attention, teachers. Please ensure your doors are locked during instruction." West Ridge High prided itself on safety. Posters lined the halls. "See something. Say something. Zero tolerance for bullying. You are not alone." But behind those posters were cracks. And in those cracks, Jordan Hayes slipped right through. He was referred to the counselor once for withdrawn behavior and concerning language in a poetry assignment. The counselor spoke to him for 12 minutes. He said he was fine. They checked a box, filed a report. No follow-up. Jordan had been absent for nearly a month. When he returned, no one asked why. He sat through 3 classes that morning. No one checked his bag. No one noticed the way he kept glancing at the clock. One teacher thought about saying something. She noticed how still he was, how his hoodie sleeves were pulled over his hands like he was hiding something. But the bell rang. She moved on. There had been rumors. A post last year about a hit list. A fight in the cafeteria that ended with Jordan screaming, "You'll all regret this one day." Administration said it was teenage overreaction. He was suspended for 3 days. No counseling. No mental health evaluation. Just 3 days. When students joke about someone snapping. When teachers say, "He gives me a weird vibe." When guidance counselors make notes they never revisit. Sometimes, that's all it takes. On the morning of June 4th, Jordan passed 6 staff members in the hall. Not one of them made eye contact. There's no villain music in real life. No flashing red lights before something breaks. Sometimes, tragedy walks in through the front door. Silent, unnoticed, unchallenged, and no one knows it's here until it's already inside. At exactly 11:17 a.m., the fire alarm didn't ring. The bell for 4th period never sounded. But something else did. A sound no one forgets, even if they only hear it once. It started in the C wing. Mr. Allison's English class. 22 students. One open door. Jordan Hayes didn't say a word. He stepped inside, pulled the gun from his backpack, raised it, fired. One student was hit in the shoulder. Another tried to run. He was grazed in the leg. Mr. Allison threw himself between them. Shot once in the back. Panic spread like a virus. Some students froze. Some screamed. Some didn't understand what they were hearing. Lockdown alerts hadn't gone out yet. No alarms. No intercoms. Just chaos. 2 classrooms over, Ella Bennett sat in earth science. She had just passed a note to her friend Zoe. "Wanna hang after school?" Then came the noise. One loud bang. Then another. Then silence. The kind of silence that tastes like metal and fear. The teacher froze. Students looked at each other, confused. One boy said, "Was that fireworks?" Ella knew it wasn't. Zoe whispered, "What do we do?" Ella reached for her phone. She texted one person. Not her friend. Not her teacher. Her brother. "Something's wrong. I think there's a shooter." In room B14, 2 floors up, Liam Bennett felt his stomach drop. He stood mid-step on his way to the whiteboard. His math teacher was writing out an equation when Liam's phone buzzed again. "I love you. If I don't make it out, just know that, okay?" That was when the intercom came alive. A shaky voice. The principal. Intercom voice, nervous, breaking. "Attention all teachers. This is a lockdown. Repeat, this is not a drill. Lock your doors. Get away from windows." And somewhere in the maze of West Ridge High, Jordan Hayes reloaded. Ella Bennett was crouched behind a filing cabinet, knees pulled to her chest. Beside her, Zoe clutched her hand so tightly it turned red. The teacher had turned off the lights, locked the door, told them to stay quiet, hide, wait. But no one felt safe. Not really. Not when footsteps echoed in the hallway. Not when someone outside screamed and then fell silent. Ella's hands trembled as she typed. She wanted to call her mom, but she didn't want to make a sound. So she messaged the one person she trusted to stay calm. "Liam, her big brother. I think there's a shooter. We're hiding in science class. Don't tell mom yet. Just be with me, okay?" Liam's reply came instantly. "I'm here. Stay hidden. Don't move. You're gonna be okay." And then Ella sent the message that broke him. "I love you. If I don't make it out, just know that, okay?" She meant it as a just in case. Not goodbye. Not a death sentence. Just something she had to say. Because in that moment, the walls didn't feel strong enough. The floor felt like it might give way, and her voice was stuck in her throat. She stared at the screen, wondering if she'd ever see a sky again, wondering if her mom knew where she sat today, wondering if the boy with the gun even knew her name. She wasn't thinking about politics, or mental health, or lockdown drills. She was thinking about her cat, about the book she left half-finished, about the way Liam once stood up to a bully for her in 3rd grade. She was thinking, this can't be how it ends. And then, footsteps. Closer. The door handle rattled. One girl whimpered. The teacher held up a hand, signaling silence. The knob turned, and stopped. Whoever it was, kept walking, and Ella exhaled the breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. She texted Liam again. "Still here. Still breathing." He replied, "Stay strong. I've got you." And she smiled, just for a second, even in terror. She found light in the one person who always answered. By 11:24 a.m., West Ridge High was no longer a school. It was a labyrinth of locked doors, dark classrooms, and shaking breaths. There were 1,237 students on campus that day, every one of them hiding. In the band room, a boy named Caleb tried to calm his little sister. She kept asking, "What if he finds us?" He didn't have an answer, so he just whispered, "Sure, just breathe. Just breathe." In the library, a teacher silently slid a heavy bookshelf in front of the door, then crouched with 19 students under tables and behind book carts. One girl texted her dad, "Don't call me, just in case he hears the ringtone." In a biology class, someone had an asthma attack. They didn't have an inhaler. The teacher handed them her coffee cup and said, "Sip slowly. Focus on my voice." Every creak in the hallway felt like footsteps. Every bang, like it could be the door next. Outside, SWAT teams were forming a perimeter. Drones in the air. Reporters setting up across the street. Parents arriving, screaming, crying, clawing at barricades. No one knew where the shooter was, only that he was still inside, still moving, still armed, and possibly watching the same alerts spreading on social media in real time. Back inside room C12, Ella was still holding Zoe's hand. Their teacher was typing something in her phone, deleting it, typing again. She finally sent it to her husband. "Tell the boys I love them. I'm okay. I think." The human mind doesn't know what to do with that much fear. So it rewinds. To childhood, to comfort, to faith. One student began praying aloud. Another silently mouthed her grandmother's name over and over again. Everyone was waiting, not for rescue, but for sound, because sound meant change. And when you're trapped in fear, even bad noise feels better than waiting. And then, finally, from somewhere deep in the hallway, a voice. Officer, shouting. "Police, if you can hear me, stay where you are. Do not open the door unless instructed." It wasn't over, but someone was coming. And for the first time in 11 terrifying minutes, hope crept into the darkness. Liam Bennett was 2 floors above his sister, but it felt like 100 miles. His classroom door was locked. The lights were off. His classmates were crouched against the far wall, huddled in silence. And in his hand, his phone, still glowing, still open, still waiting for Ella's next message. "Still here," she had written. "Still breathing." But that was 5 minutes ago. 5 long minutes in a school-turned-war zone. Liam kept refreshing the screen, kept staring at the last 3 dots, hoping they'd start moving, hoping she was still okay. He thought about bursting into the hallway, running to her, breaking every rule they were told about lockdowns. But he didn't know where the shooter was. Didn't know if opening the door meant ending his life, or hers. So he did the only thing he could. He typed, "Are you still with me? Just tap once." And moments later, tap. She was alive, still hiding, still fighting. And so was he. Liam looked around the room, saw a kid from the soccer team crying into his jacket, a girl rocking back and forth, eyes wide. Their teacher sat against the door, a metal ruler in her hands like it could somehow protect them. Liam felt helpless. His little sister was downstairs, in a closet, listening to gunfire, and he couldn't do anything but text her. He thought about the time she got lost at the grocery store when they were kids. She was 6. He found her crying behind a shelf of cereal boxes. She'd looked up at him then and whispered, "I knew you'd come." This time, Ella wrote, "There's someone in the hallway. I don't know if it's police. I'm scared." Liam didn't know what to say, so he typed the only thing that mattered. "Stay hidden. I love you. I promise you're not alone." And finally, after what felt like an eternity, voices. Officer, shouting outside the classroom. "Police, unlock your door slowly. Hands up. Stay calm." A sound, lock turning. Students gasping. Lights flicker on. Liam stood up, hands raised, his phone still in his palm. The officer checked the room. "Officer, everyone okay in here? Anyone hurt?" They all shook their heads. Liam spoke, not to the cop, not to his class, just into his phone. "They found us. I'm okay." And moments later, Ella replied, "Still here." By 11:42 a.m., West Ridge High was the lead story on every network. Skycam footage hovered above the roof. Reporters whispered through shaky live feeds. Headlines began to scroll. School under siege. Breaking, multiple shots fired. Fear inside West Ridge High. But outside those news vans, beyond the perfectly framed shots, was the truth. And the truth wasn't polished. It wasn't edited for TV. It was raw. It was terrified. And it was still unfolding. Ella's room was cleared at 11:49 a.m. 2 officers entered with shields up. They scanned the corners, cleared the closet, and found 17 students huddled together, some in shock, some shaking, one having wet herself. The teacher could barely speak. "You're safe now. We're getting you out." Ella couldn't stand at first. Her legs had gone numb. Zoe wrapped an arm around her, and they walked out together, into a hallway smeared with blood and dropped notebooks. The first thing Ella saw wasn't her mother. It wasn't her brother. It was a camera, shoved in her face. A reporter shouting, "Were you in the shooting? Did you see the gunman? What did he look like?" She didn't answer. She looked down, because how do you explain surviving a nightmare when the world only wants sound bites? Anchor, a developing tragedy at West Ridge High School. At least 2 students confirmed injured. Unconfirmed reports of a suspect in custody. They didn't mention Ella's name, or Zoe's, or the teacher who stayed calm despite crying inside, or the janitor who pulled 3 kids into a supply closet and locked the door from the inside. What the cameras didn't show was the boy with blood on his shoes from dragging a friend to safety, the girl who whispered prayers while keeping another from fainting, the quiet moments when survivors clung to each other like life rafts in a sea of sirens. Ella's phone buzzed again. "Liam, I'm outside. I see you. I've got you." And when their eyes finally met through the chaos, they didn't run to each other. They walked. Slow, careful, like people learning how to breathe again. He wrapped his arms around her. She said nothing. Neither did he. They didn't have to, because surviving didn't require a headline, just a heartbeat. In the days that followed, West Ridge High was silent. Classes were cancelled. The parking lot empty. The front lawn littered with flowers, candles, and hand-scrawled posters that read, "You are not forgotten. West Ridge strong. We stand together." But inside the homes of survivors, the silence was different, heavier. Ella didn't sleep much. Every creak in the hallway made her flinch. She jumped when the microwave beeped. At night, she left her closet light on, not because she was scared of the dark, but because that's where she had survived. And sometimes, the dark still smelled like gunpowder. She saw a therapist once, said almost nothing, just picked at her sleeves and stared at the rug. They called it PTSD, said it was normal, said she would heal with time. But time felt like a lie. At school, her desk sat untouched for 3 weeks. When she returned, everything felt foreign. The posters, the metal detectors, the smiling grief counselors with clipboards. Someone had written her name on the whiteboard in blue marker. "We missed you, Ella." She wanted to scream. They hadn't missed her. They'd just been lucky. Zoe barely spoke anymore. She kept her phone on silent. She cried in the locker room twice a day and never told anyone why. Liam tried to be strong, but at night, Ella could hear him crying through the wall. Once, she knocked softly and asked, "You okay?" He answered with the same words she'd texted from under that desk. "Still here." The shooter, Jordan Hayes, was in custody, charged as an adult. His mugshot made the news. People called him evil, broken, a monster. But to Ella, he was just a shadow, a shape that haunted the corners of her mind. Not because she understood him, but because for a few terrible minutes, he had controlled her world. The school held a memorial service. They planted a tree, lit candles, read the names of the wounded. Everyone clapped when a teacher gave a speech about unity. But Ella didn't clap. She just looked around and wondered how many other people in the crowd were still pretending they were okay. Healing didn't come in big moments. It came slowly. A day where Ella didn't check every exit. A night where she finally dreamed of something other than a locked door. A laugh that didn't feel forced. A morning she forgot to be afraid. And when those moments came, she held them tightly. It was 6 weeks after the shooting. The gymnasium was packed. Students, teachers, parents, media. Even strangers from neighboring towns came. They called it the Day of Reflection, a moment for survivors to speak, if they wanted to. No pressure, no cameras allowed inside, just people and pain. Ella hadn't planned to talk. She came to sit, to listen, to maybe cry, to maybe feel less alone. But when the principal stepped to the MIC and asked, "Does anyone want to share something?" Ella's hand moved before her brain could stop it. She walked up. Her hands shook. Her stomach flipped. And for a moment, she thought she'd just stand there, silent. But then, she saw her brother in the crowd. And she remembered the text she'd sent. "I love you, if I don't make it out." And she realized she had made it out. She was still here. And that meant something. "Hi, I'm Ella Bennett. I was in C12 the day it happened." A sound, silence. Listeners holding their breath. "I don't know what I'm supposed to say. I'm not brave. I was scared, really scared. I hid in a closet and thought I was going to die. I texted my brother because I thought it might be the last thing I ever did." She paused. Someone sniffled in the crowd. Zoe nodded at her from the front row. "Ella, but I'm still here. And I think a lot of us feel like we're not allowed to be okay yet. Like we're supposed to move on. But we don't know how. And I guess I just want to say, you don't have to move on. You just have to keep moving." She stepped back from the MIC. The room didn't erupt in applause. It didn't need to. People stood, some with tears streaming, some just breathing for the first time in weeks. And in that quiet room, Ella wasn't a victim. She was a survivor, a voice, a light. Later that night, a teacher posted a quote from Ella's speech online. "You don't have to move on. You just have to keep moving." It was shared 200,000 times in 3 days. People printed it on shirts, wrote it on locker doors, tattooed it on their arms. She had been silent in a closet once. But now, people were listening. And maybe that was the beginning of healing. 3 days after Ella's speech, the police released a sealed file to the district attorney's office. Inside, photos of the scene, incident timelines, witness reports, and a handwritten letter, folded into a spiral notebook, tucked beneath a hoodie in the shooter's backpack. Signed, Jordan Hayes. It wasn't a manifesto. It wasn't a threat. It was a goodbye. Written in blue ink, shaky at the edges, the letter was 9 pages long. No salutation. Just this. "I'm sorry. I really am." Jordan wrote about loneliness, about being invisible, about walking through the halls like a ghost, about never hearing his name unless it was being laughed at. He wrote about the cafeteria table he sat at. Every day, alone. He wrote, "No one noticed when I didn't speak for a week. No one asked why I wore the same hoodie for 10 days. No one cared when I cried in the bathroom during lunch." But somewhere around page 5, his writing changed. More frantic, more scattered. "Dak, they tell you it gets better. But what if it doesn't? I didn't want to hurt people. I just wanted to make the noise stop. I'm not evil. I just wanted out. And I wanted them to feel what I felt, just once." He listed names. Not all were victims. Some were kids who used to be his friends. One was a girl who threw a milk carton at him in 7th grade. Another was a teacher who once asked, "Are you okay?" but never followed up. At the bottom of that page, he wrote, "I think I just wanted someone to see me before I disappeared." The letter was evidence, but it became something more. Some called it an excuse. Some called it a warning. Others called it a mirror, because what Jordan wrote didn't just expose his pain. It reflected theirs. Ella read the letter weeks later. Someone leaked it online. It was viral within hours. She didn't defend him. Didn't hate him either. She just stared at one line for almost an hour. Maybe if someone had said my name, just once, I wouldn't be writing this. Zoe wept after reading it, not because she forgave him, but because it hurt to know how broken someone could be. Without anyone noticing, the school doubled its mental health funding, launched anonymous counseling, added peer mediation. But to Ella, it all felt too late. The letter didn't change what happened, but it explained the silence behind the gunshots. On September 9th, Jordan Hayes was led into courtroom 6B in shackles. 16 years old, charged as an adult, tried for 2 counts of attempted murder, unlawful possession of a firearm, and terroristic threats. His eyes were downcast, his hair longer. No trench coat this time, just an orange jumpsuit, too big for his frame. And for the first time, the parents of the survivors saw him up close. Some wept, some glared. One father had to be restrained in the hallway before opening statements. The DA painted him as cold, calculated, evil. A ticking time bomb who wanted blood. The defense said he was mentally unstable. Not a killer, just a kid. One failed by the system, failed by his school, and abandoned by everyone who should have seen the signs. Ella was called to testify on day 3. She wore a gray sweater, spoke softly, didn't look at Jordan once. When asked what she remembered most, she said, his eyes, not angry, just empty. The courtroom fell silent. Zoe took the stand after her. She froze halfway through her testimony, started sobbing uncontrollably. She never finished. The judge let her step down. Then came the letter. The defense entered it into evidence. Read portions aloud to the jury. One juror visibly shook when they heard the line. I didn't want to hurt everyone, just the ones who laughed. The courtroom divided instantly. To some, it changed nothing. A sad backstory didn't erase the screams, didn't undo the trauma, didn't bring back innocence. But to others, it opened a door to something more complex. Not sympathy, not forgiveness, but understanding. Jordan never testified. When asked by the judge if he had anything to say, he stood, trembling, and whispered, I didn't know how to ask for help. And then he sat back down. On day 10, the verdict came in. Guilty on all counts. Jordan Hayes was sentenced to 45 years in prison, eligible for parole in 30. He was 16. Ella didn't smile when the sentence was read. She didn't cry either. She just turned to her brother and said, It's over. And Liam replied, No, it's just beginning. Because trials don't end pain. Verdicts don't erase memory. And justice isn't healing. It's just a step. One hard, necessary step. In a road no one ever asks to walk. It took 6 months for the school to reopen all of its hallways. The West Wing had been sealed, remodeled, repainted. Bullet holes patched. Lockers replaced. The floor scrubbed until no trace of that day remained. But the memories, they lived in every corner. Ella stood outside room C12 for the first time in half a year. Her reflection stared back at her from the newly polished window. Older somehow. Not by age, but by what she'd survived. She didn't go inside. She just stood there, silent. And then the bell rang. The first time she heard it again, Ella froze. That sound used to mean normal. Books, backpacks, hall passes. But now it echoed like a trigger, a reminder of the last time it rang before chaos. Her heart raced. For just a second, she was back in the closet, holding her breath, texting goodbye. Then she looked up and saw Zoe down the hall. Zoe waved. Ella smiled, just barely, and walked toward her. It was a small thing, but it was everything. She didn't run. She didn't cry. She didn't freeze. She just kept moving. The school installed new mental health rooms. Therapists were on site every day. A garden was planted in the courtyard. Ella helped dig the first patch of soil. And in the front office hung a framed photo. A simple message beneath it in bold black letters. We remember. We rise. Liam joined a student group that mentored incoming freshmen. He told his story once, cried halfway through, finished anyway. He said it helped. Ella still didn't like loud noises. She still checked exits in movie theaters. Still jumped when someone knocked too hard on a desk. But she laughed more now. And she walked to class without her head down. And most days, she didn't think about the closet, just the sunlight, and the sound of her name during roll call. The bell rang again, and this time, she didn't flinch. She closed her locker, slung her bag over one shoulder, turned to her brother at the end of the hall, and walked forward. The message was only 3 words, typed in fear, sent from the dark. I love you. Ella never meant for it to become anything more than a goodbye. But it did. Liam saved her message. He screenshotted it that day and never deleted it. 6 months later, he showed it to a reporter. The headline went viral. She texted I love you and survived. Within hours, people were sharing it across the country. A survivor's final message. The text that captured a nation's heartbreak. Simple words, shattering meaning. But the story didn't end there. One night, Liam opened an email from a woman in Wisconsin. My daughter was in a lockdown today. She was hiding under a desk and texted me those same words. I love you. Because of your sister's story. I knew what that meant, and I was able to stay calm. Thank you. Dozens more followed. Parents, siblings, students, all saying the same thing. Her words helped us through the unthinkable. Ella didn't feel like a hero. She never wanted to be one. She didn't start a movement, didn't start a foundation. She just kept living, going to school, walking past room C12, smiling when she could. But her words, typed in a moment of terror, reminded people of what matters when everything else falls apart. Connection, love, a reason to hold on. Now, every time Liam hears a notification, he checks, just to make sure, because those 3 words aren't just goodbye anymore. They are a lifeline. They are a beginning. They are proof that even in the darkest moments, someone is holding on. She texted I love you thinking it might be the end. But it became a message that saved 2 lives. If you're struggling, if the silence feels too loud, say something. Reach out. Sometimes, the smallest message can echo the loudest. Dove, if you or someone you know is in crisis, please reach out. You are not alone. Call or text 988, Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you enjoyed this episode of Chase Studio Stories, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your support helps us continue to share impactful and meaningful content.